I'm going to start with the question that I get asked on a very regular basis. And just a quick show of hands, how many people have asked themselves this question: will AI take our jobs? Will AI take my job? So not as many hands as I thought, actually, but it's obviously a challenging question that I'm asked by friends, family. I've got friends that have got kids at university, going through education. What's going to happen when they leave? The main one that sticks with me is my daughter. So my daughter starts high school in September, and she is very excited about the work that I do. So I'm very much, and I'll tell you a bit more about what we do, but I'm very much immersed in this AI world at the moment. So I get to come home with different tools to play with, and she loves it. She loves it. But she said to me one day, probably about 6 months ago, when we started to talk about high school and where she was going to go, and she's like, "Mummy, what am I going to do when I leave school? Like, what do I do when I go to college? What do I do when am I going to go to university? You know, what will I do?" And as a parent, it's quite hard to go, "Actually, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question." And I'm in this sector. So I think the only thing we can do is sort of look to the past and think about what have we gone through in these waves of technology and these waves of shifts that have happened that have affected how we work. You know, if you think about the Industrial Revolution through to the internet was obviously a huge one. A lot of roles came out of these that we couldn't have estimated or forecast at that time. And the same thing is happening now. You know, we're already seeing the roles that are coming out now through AI engineers, prompt engineering, that type of thing. And I guess, you know, we can look to the past and we can also look to what we know now, and what do we know about AI and what impact is it having right now. And to try and answer that question as someone that's in the industry is still quite hard. So to me, I'm thinking, well, what about people who aren't in the industry? How do they answer those questions? And I think when you see what's in the media, there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of negativity. Jason spoke about that at the beginning of this. You know, there's a lot of doom and gloom about it, so no wonder people are asking this question quite a lot. And what we've identified is a huge gap, basically. There's a huge gap in not just adoption, there's skills, understanding, just, you know, a huge gap in being able to answer those critical questions. For anyone that's familiar with this is a technology adoption curve. And it couldn't be more relevant, really, for this AI wave that we're going through. So what you've got on the left-hand side here is the innovators, so the people that throw themselves into new technologies. They're at the forefront of it. You know, they want to learn, they want to consume. The other side of it, you've got what they call the laggards, which is the people that don't want to hear about it, or they're not necessarily confident. They don't trust it, they don't know enough about it. And that creates this gap, which is stopping people from being able to cross over that and have that confidence. And that gap is getting wider and wider every single day. And what part of my why, I suppose, of why I'm doing what I'm doing is to try and help people with not just education, but building confidence within that as well. So just a bit of background about me. So I'm not a technical person, and I don't even try to be. I just am very much immersed in this AI industry. But because I'm not technical, I go out of my way to try and understand what I can, and I've become a bit of a translator within that, with what we do, is to try and interpret what the technical side of things means to general business operations and non-technical people. So one of the questions that I was asking myself very early on at the beginning of all of this AI sort of wave was, where's it come from, and, you know, what is it? And, you know, there might be people in this room that really do understand that question, but I imagine there's probably quite a lot of people that don't. So I just thought I'd, you know, cover that off really and just see, hopefully that helps people. That Google themselves, they released in 2017, they released an open source paper, which was around the transformer architecture and the algorithm that goes with it. And that was basically like the magic sauce, really, for these big companies to be able to take that and use all of the data from the internet that they've got to process that at a scale that enabled us to then end up with ChatGPT in our hands in 2023. People familiar with NVIDIA? I guess that's a name that people may have heard of. These guys, a big company behind the power of the compute. So what you can see on this graph, I'm not expecting you to see it, look at it in detail, but the cluster of the dots in the top corner and the scale of the graph going up is basically all the models that power the large language models that we use today. And the reason why we've got a big cluster of all of that happening is because the compute power was able to catch up with the scale of it. And all of these things basically came together as a tipping point, which enabled us to be able to then have these models launched to the market for us to be able to use. And what's happened with that, again, is the scale of this graph that you need to see. It's not necessarily the detail. What this shows is how AI is exceeding human performance, which is exciting but also quite scary at the same time. It is now proving to be better than humans at most things, such as reading comprehension, image recognition, that type of thing. That creates opportunity. It also creates a widening gap as well. And one last graph, I promise, no more graphs. This is something that was released in March this year from Anthropic, who power Claude. And what this shows is all sort of different segments of industry. And the blue graph is what AI is capable of doing now. And the red is what we are actually using it for currently. So that gap, again, is going to continue to get wider. So the more capable the models become, and the less we adopt it, the bigger the gap. So I actually spent 16 years in the recruitment industry. So learning, obviously, or being absorbed within businesses and understanding a lot about job market and people and what have you. And I made the transition probably 5-6 years ago into the tech industry and sort of had to cross over my own gap, really, in terms of knowledge. I really do embrace change. I love change. I love throwing myself into it, but I really understand that a lot of people don't, and it's actually quite a scary time to be able to work out how do we go from here to here. I ended up co-founding a development company called Decodify about 3 or 4 years ago. And at that point, like ChatGPT obviously was released in 23, within 12 months of that, me co-founding that business, there was coding agents that came out. So anyone that's familiar with that, it just meant that suddenly software engineers were asking that question about, is AI going to take my job? But it wasn't just, is AI going to take our job? It was, is AI going to take our business? And it was quite a scary time. And I literally ripped up my business plan in the first few weeks of that year and said, right, we either do one thing or we throw ourselves into it and lean into it, or we just sort of bury our head in the sands. So we spent 12 months going through a complete transition period where we then became an AI native development company. And subsequently, we ended up getting acquired early part of this year, which was really, really exciting. But then put me in a position to be able to go and say, right, I want to help other businesses go on this journey now, and actually take them through what we've learned. And obviously there's still so much to learn because it's changing so fast. So in terms of what we're doing at the moment, what we're seeing is that businesses are experimenting a lot. People within those businesses are experimenting, but they're not really seeing the impact and they're not necessarily getting the return on investment. There's too many tools. Like, is anyone like totally overwhelmed with the amount of stuff that they see on LinkedIn? I mean, I'm in this space and I am so unbelievably overwhelmed every single day to think I've got to try and keep up. So for people that aren't, I can't even imagine. And no wonder it's, you know, there's no clear starting point with this because it is all so new. Access isn't the problem. It is just about being able to have that roadmap and have the confidence to be able to go with it. We know that people do. People are coming to us, they're talking to us, and you know, businesses are getting started with this stuff, and they know they can't ignore it. It's not going anywhere, but they just need that guidance. Concerns with trust data and ethics is a massive one, and there's an endless list of concerns that people have. But again, going back to the gap, if people understood more about what it actually is and how it works to a basic level, the confidence starts to build, and we see that in the sessions that we run. So I'm the co-founder of Zygens, and we're an agentic AI consultancy. So we work with predominantly financial services and professional services firms at enterprise level. It's really exciting work. You know, these guys that have the same problems as SMEs, as the big corporates do, of going, where do we start with this stuff? And it's not, the technology isn't the problem. It is around the people, the process, and a lot of it is a cultural shift as well as trying to get the skills in-house to be able to do it. But another thing that we have launched is something called the AI Lab. And we launched it probably in the last sort of like 5 weeks. And this came from, we've both got our own personal missions with what we want to do with it. But for me, I went into my daughter's school, primary school, so she's year 6 in January to do Careers Week. And the first slide that I brought up was some logos of all the large language models. and I asked the kids if they could do a little quiz with it, and I was absolutely gobsmacked that pretty much all of them knew all of them. So I did the same quiz with the teachers, and it was quite different. I think there was like ChatGPT was probably the main one, maybe a bit of Copilot that they knew. And that was a real takeaway, because the rest of that day I spent with the teachers talking to them, and they were genuinely quite fearful of the fact that the kids knew more than they did. And because this industry is moving so fast, how on earth is the education sector going to keep up with it? And we, coming back again as a parent, but then putting my business hat on, I was like, surely we need to be doing something about this, because we are at the forefront of this. And if we're feeling overwhelmed, then we should be trying to give something back with this. So we've launched the AI Lab, which I will come back to in a sec. So this is, again, just a little bit of an idea of the sort of things that we're teaching people and that we're helping people with, is understanding, like, what's a model, what's the difference between chat and agents. So, large language models, I'm guessing everyone's familiar with that term now, LLMs. It's something that's become part of our vocabulary quite regularly now. But basically, all a large language model is it's a huge amount of data, and that data has been trained to predict the next best word. That's really, on simple terms, which is how the only way I can break things down, that's pretty much all it is. Very, very clever technology that's gone in to be able to predict that next best word. But that's why when you ask something into ChatGPT, it will always answer with something. And it will probably answer with something that you want to hear. Unless you adapt it, it can give you the answer that you think you want to hear all of the time. It has no memory, it has no goal. It is literally, it's that. And a lot of people are using it now for Google, like as a replacement for Google. The difference with agentic AI, which is where we spend a lot of our time working with people, is that it takes that large language model and the technology with that to be able to then turn it into something that's more bespoke for you. So you can set it a goal. You can give it has memory, so it will remember the information that you've given it, and you can give it specific data sources so that it only references that. And it's these type of understandings where people go, okay, maybe actually my concerns aren't fully justified, and there are some ways that we can make this a little bit safer for us. And don't get me wrong, it's still, you've got to approach with caution, but there are ways that you can adapt these sort of models and these frameworks to make it work for you. And that's, that is sort of where the magic starts to happen then internally with businesses. So just a bit more on the AI lab. So these are recent photos from the last few weeks. And like I said, my daughter is there over on this side here. Very proud to be part of the AI lab and absolutely loving it. And she's going to be running workshops at some point to teach people how to build apps and stuff. So, this is the really fun, cool side of what we're doing. We've been backed by Trinity Shopping Centre in Leeds, who have been amazing. They've supported us with this by giving us a space to be able to do it. And we were having the general public come up to us when we were promoting it, and the amount of negativity around AI was just huge, and it was a real shocker for me because I thought everyone was as excited about it as well I am. I envisaged literally queues of people wanting to talk to us, and it wasn't the case at all. However, what we did find, we ended up with over 150 people across 3 days that actually signed up to the sessions. So as much as there was a lot of negativity of people walking around, there was a huge amount of interest and curiosity with it as well. And we took them through an hour's workshop, and the feedback that we got was just amazing. We were able to give them that little bit of next step of confidence to start playing with these things. But another big takeaway was the students. And we had guys sat on on these hours courses who were doing computer science degrees or applied artificial intelligence degrees who still didn't have the skills to be able to do the basic stuff of actually using AI day to day. And since doing this, we've then developed a bit of a partnership with Leeds Business School, where we're going to start running some just application of AI for students to help them in, whether it's in their actual university course, but coming out of work and what have you. So these are just some of the comments that we had from the sessions, and we're going to continue doing it. So it was a pilot that we'd run for 3 weeks. It's gone really well. The lady there who's been interviewed is Tracy Brabin, who's the Mayor of West Yorkshire. She's given us her full support as well. She came down last Saturday and was really, really upbeat about it, and there's absolutely a need in the business, in the market, to be able to do this. From our experience then across sort of the lab, and to sort of bring it back around to what actually works, is that a lot of the businesses that we're finding now that are adopting AI or starting on this adoption journey, they say to us, what can we do? Because a big part of it is a cultural shift. It's not like I say the technology. And having community sort of areas within either the business or just generally within the community to talk about stuff in a really, really safe space without fear of failure. And I think that's a lot of the problem, is that as a non-technical person, I can just ask the stupid questions and get away with it. And that's okay. And I think it's giving people that space to be able to say, I don't know what you're talking about. What you can see on this picture here is me back in October. I'd built a meal planning app. Has anyone heard of Lovable? Yeah, a couple of nods, yeah. So basically Lovable is an app development tool where you can just prompt it like ChatGPT and it will build apps for you. Really cool, and that's like what my daughter absolutely loves playing with. I'd built a meal planning app and I hadn't expected to be demoing it suddenly to a room of 100 people, but anyway, it happened. And it was so much fun, and the engagement that we had around that, along with 3 or 4 other people also doing the demos, again, just sort of gave people a bit of more confidence and a bit of engagement into what's possible and having a bit of fun with it. So doing sort of hack days and those type of things within businesses has been really, really positive. People can come up with new ideas and they can showcase it to their team members. The AI Lab Monthly is something that we just launched because we had such a good run at the pilot. We're going to continue with the monthly community, which is going to be sharing what's happened in the last month with AI. Now, that could take up a whole day probably because it moves every single day. But the idea is that we'll take key points of what's happened in the last month. We'll share them with people. They know that they can come every month and have a regular touch point with what's happening. But then they can also showcase some of the stuff that they've been playing with. And then just to have like an AI champion team, depending on the size of the business that you've got, either individual teams or just one person, but someone that's going to continue to have that conversation on a regular basis. A big part of what we do is around using domain experts, so getting people that are actually doing the roles themselves to come up with use cases, and being able to really foster that within a business starts to change the culture. So our mission is very much, we're trying to close that gap and doing things like this today and just helping people build up that confidence with it. I do have a bit of a crazy vision, which I really do hope, and I think where we're at today, obviously talking about productivity and skills and jobs, is that maybe the positives that will come from working with all of this AI shift is that we might have our children saying to us at one point, what, you used to work 50, 60-hour weeks, you were 9 till 5 Monday to Friday, like, why, that's crazy. When we could get maybe the engines doing some of that stuff underneath and we can spend more time doing things like this and actually maybe just have a bit more balance in our life, that would be cool, wouldn't it? So that's one of my personal visions and missions, and I think the more we talk about that, the better, the more likely it might be. So any questions at all?
Yeah, Chris Diamond from Sheffield Digital.
Hi.
What do you think of the trend in China of people raising lobsters using OpenClaw? It's like become a social trend. People talk about their personal agent as a lobster, and they see them as pets, and thousands of people are being trained all across the country. And the whole economic development focus is shifting to try and create environments for one-person companies now in China.
Is everyone familiar with OpenClaw and that sort of shift? Not many nods. So just a bit of context. Yeah, it's a great question. And it's one that I've spent a lot of time looking into. There's a guy who founded OpenClaw. He's got a TED Talk now. So young lad, I think he's early 20s, that had taken this technology and had turned it into basically very much a personal assistant. So you can send it a WhatsApp message or a Telegram message, and it would have access to absolutely everything that you have access to. When we're talking banking, we're talking personal access details on all of your laptops. So it's very, very crazy, very out there, very much not advised. But the concept of what he's created is actually where now the big companies are going, this is where we're headed, to be able to really hack that productivity and the efficiency for us as humans. And if you're familiar with Claude Cowork, this was sort of already a step towards this whole having your assistant do everything for you, but in a much more secure way. Anthropic, Microsoft have partnered with Anthropic to bring Cowork into the Microsoft ecosystem. Now, anyone that's familiar with Microsoft will know that that's not a very common thing for Microsoft to partner with someone in the way that they've done. They'd probably just acquire them. That wasn't obviously an option. In addition to that, OpenAI took the guy that built this OpenClaw and actually offered them a lot of money to then come and work for them. And then NVIDIA have also said, this is the way that we need to go as enterprises. So the actual concept of it, to answer your question, I think is fantastic. And I think the indication of what's happening with the likes of Microsoft, partnering and bringing co-work into the ecosystem is it's something to watch and something to be really mindful of. And anyone that's used it, it is taking that agentic AI to the next level. You do have control over it, you can plan it, but it will do a series of steps for you to be able to say, here's your goal, go off and do it. And it might take 10, 15 minutes to execute it, but it will have done maybe 5 or 6 tasks in that time and saved you potentially hours of work.
Hi, yeah, I'm Vanessa. So I also work integrating AI into software systems. And one of the things we're seeing from our clients who are manufacturers, distribution companies, those kind of things, they're small to medium enterprises. And for them, integrating AI is a massive gamble in terms of cost. And there is this fear that with the discourse around the investment bubble around AI and not very much clarity over what tokens are going to cost in the future, there's this fear that if you take this gamble, integrate AI into your workflows, and then that cost does a huge ramp up, what does that do for your business as that, several £1 million turnover company? That could kill it, potentially, if that's become a fundamental part of your workflow. What's your view on that, really?
The subsidy of AI is looking like it's going to start to change. So we've had a subsidised access to the tokens, and it's been very, very cheap. And it's starting to shift. And what we've always said to our clients anyway is that you start really, really small. So you start on very low risk use cases and start to build up that way. I think what you can look at it from a positive perspective on the job market is that actually from seeing this news now coming out that it's not free, it's absolutely not free, and the cost is going to start to get more heavy, that you need to start thinking about it like a salary and like a role. Now, that mindset shift, I think, is going to start to change probably the narrative in the media as well, and the fact that it's a new technology that's going to help make us more efficient, but we've got to approach it in a very strategic way, and we've got to make sure that we're balancing that with the costs associated with it as well. So yeah, it's a really relevant point, and I think it's something we're going to see much more of over the next coming weeks with it. But with all of this adoption, it's all about just starting really, really small, and it's not about replacing people. It's just about enhancing what they are doing at first, see what the cost is with it, start to manage it, start to have that visibility on it, and have that confidence as it grows.